Cool. Now we're live, and we're only on YouTube now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So doing this again, bringing it back to the beginning. When I first met you at ALX Communities, and I was passing by, and I saw you in one of those little phone booths, and like you
Yeah,
looked like you were rapping or something. So I was like, when I see you again, I got to catch up and see what's going on. I remember that's when you told me about the 17 albums in 17 months.
yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. So
Okay.
you were perceptive in knowing that I was making music. You probably seen that look in the artist's eyes before,
Yeah.
and you
They're
could see
hungry.
like,
They're
yeah,
fire.
the
Uh
animation and excitement all at the
huh.
same time. So you knew exactly what it was, and then we just started chopping it up, and it just so happened there was so much overlap in the things that we were doing, both artistically and business wise. So it was like we were on parallel journeys right next to each other, and we didn't even know it.
Right. Right. In the same space too.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So what made you even want to partake in the 17 albums in 17 months? That's a serious achievement, man. You know what I'm saying? You have to have a lot of confidence in your production, your engineering, your rap, you know what I'm saying? Everything being efficient. So what made you even want to try to undertake that?
It wasn't like a stated mission, to be honest with you. I
Mm,
just realized I was doing it at that pace, right?
okay.
So it wasn't something that like I consciously set out to be like, yo, I'm gonna do this, and this is like the milestone for me. I just the pace that I was recording at, I was like, yo, I'm actually somebody actually brought it to my attention. It was my cousin. He's like, yo, you know, you're doing like an album a month right now. And when I thought about it, I was like, yo, that's actually a pretty good wave to try to ride. And then it was kind of like a personal challenge to myself and not only being able to be consistent and have like the discipline to do it,
Hmm.
but could I do it well, right? And
Right.
not have a drop off in the quality and just do it to achieve like that metric. It was like, yo, can I actually enhance and evolve as an artist with every album that I put out? And to me, that was like the greater measure of like success was people that I really respect their ear and they have like, nuanced, refined ear for music
Hmm.
and for them to like validate it and be like, yo, I don't even know how you're always interesting me with your albums. Like I'm looking forward to you dropping it as opposed to like it being like a homework assignment for them to go and listen
Right.
to something.
Right.
So like the numbers are great. And that's the thing that's kind of like the hook, like to say that you did it. But really the measure as an artist is like, are people enjoying every single thing that I'm doing? Right. And
Right.
and I think I was able to do that pretty well.
Right. Right. And I was just telling you before, I was listening to your album, Retro.
Right.
And, you know, one of the things so there's a few things that stick out to me about it. One is you can definitely flow. Like your rap is on point. You hit hard from the very beginning, from the
Yeah.
very first track. You don't waste no time, man. You jump into it quick. And I like that. I like that. And then your flow fits well with your beats you select. You know,
Right.
so it's got definitely got that 90s feel to it. Definitely got that 90s feel. How do you first of all, what's your creation process and how do you in that? How do you find the beats to work with and because you pick really well. I don't know if you produce it yourself, but you pick really good beats to go along with your voice and your flow.
I appreciate it. First of all, thank you for noticing that. It's something that I've consciously worked on over time, and I think I got better at it. Initially, when I started out, I was actually going out and curating beats myself, right? So I would like meet people on social media, be on Bandcamp, and all these different places where artists would, display and showcase their work. And I would go out there and try to find the beats. And then eventually, when I started making a lot of connections and contacts and I got a little bit of a buzz, people started sending me beats, right?
Okay.
So it made it a lot easier for me. And people, you're a producer yourself. So, producers are very protective of their art. With us rappers, we get to pick the beats we want to rap on.
Mhm.
Sometimes when you're a producer, the artist picks the beat, right? So
Right.
you may not necessarily vibe with the artist's specific like talent or their skill set,
Mhm.
and it's a business deal for you. You just like they want it, I'm gonna give it to them. So it's cool to have people that actually listen and they say, "Hey, I think you would sound great on this," and it's already curated. By the time it gets to me, it's somebody who knows like my creative style and
Right.
they can see that I would sound good on those beats. And then you kind of build up this network of producers. And I think, to be honest with you, as an artist, the producer is the biggest part of the song making process. Like, I don't think they get enough credit. I think they get the checks, like in the industry, if you look at it. Producers make a good amount of money once
Right.
they actually break.
Right.
But they're really the most important part because they're giving you the canvas to paint on,
Mhm.
right? Like my inspiration comes from the sounds that they create, right? So I don't write lyrics at all, right? So the music actually guides me into like the thoughts and the rhyme patterns and the cadences and the pockets that I find. So to me, the as an artist, the producer is the most important part of the actual creative process.
Right, right. That's interesting. So you don't write lyrics at all. So take me into that. So not writing lyrics, you have in your head, is it almost like a photographic memory thing, which you know what you're going to say, you know kind of the cadence, or do you use it basically really a freestyle off the top of the head when you rap?
It's a total freestyle, man. I
Okay.
have no idea what I'm gonna say. I just know that a beat has like inspired me and moved me,
Hmm.
and the first part of it is kind of getting the tone and the cadence and how you're gonna rhyme. Like
Right.
certain artists, they have the same rhyme on every beat, right? But they're really good at it, right? So they can make an entire career of rhyming the same way over just different beats, right?
Mm.
And I kind of was the same way when I wrote because I would hear the beat and then I would sit there and I would literally roadmap a rhyme
Mm.
over the beat.
Mm.
But I realized like I started experimenting and I would freestyle at the end of a song, right? I'd be like, okay, this is like the part where I could just be loose and let loose and just, shoot the half court shot and see what happens.
Right.
And I started realizing that was my favorite part of the songs I was making was the parts when I was just kind of like riffing off the top. So I was like, let me see if I can actually do a whole song that way. If that's the best part of the song, let me make that the part of the song, the whole song built around that.
Right.
And because it's digital, like I come from me and you, same age bracket. So we come from the analog era, right? So
Right.
I started recording on cassette tapes. Like I used to go to Costco and have my mom buy like the 24 pack of Maxwell tapes.
Yeah.
And you had to learn your entire song. You couldn't breathe wrong. You couldn't sneeze wrong. You had to get the whole verse in one take.
Hmm.
So it trains you to because you didn't have the luxury of being able to punch in at that point. So like the muscle memory and the repetition, it creates a proficiency level that when you go digital, it's almost like a cheat code. You're like, you
Right.
can do this with your eyes closed.
Hmm.
So being digital and being able to control like the actual engineering part myself, I can punch in whenever I want. It's literally a cheat code to being able to create in the moment.
Right.
And it also creates this experience for me. I get to listen to my song as a fan because I don't even know what I'm saying, right? Like usually artists write the song, so they already know what it's going to be. The only thing that the playback is giving you is how it printed on the actual music, right? It's the delivery of it. You already know what you're going to say, every single part of the song. But when I'm starting, I have no clue what I'm going to say. So that playback is me listening to it as a fan, like, oh, I said that. So there's an experience of listening to like the song as a person who doesn't even know what the song is, which is like a really cool part of being able to create in that format.
Yeah. Now that's fascinating. It reminds me almost of the difference of a jazz musician riffing versus
Exactly.
like a classically trained musician who's just writing what's on or playing what's on the sheet. You know.
That's a very good comparison. Yep.
So in that, I can see how they can be beneficial flow wise to play with the beat and play with different rhyme schemes like that. But does it affect your lyrics at all? The depth of your lyrics? Because like when I listen to your lyrics, it's very intricate. You talk about some real things. You're talking about some things that you. It seems like you had to think about. So do you think it affects the depth of your lyrics at all?
Yo, the irony of it is when I put the pen down, my wordplay went to another level.
Oh, really? Okay.
And like I, that's God's work. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's innate, right? I can't take credit for that. These are just thoughts. Where did the thoughts come from, right? So I'd be um, I don't take credit for that part of it. I think what I was able to do was through practice and repetition, I ascended to a level of mastery that I didn't even think existed, right? And if you do something long enough, like it becomes unconscious. Think about like your first day driving, right? Think of like I remember when I was doing like I got my learner's permit
Right.
and I was looking at people. I was so shook. I had my hands on what 11 and 2, had my seatbelt on, had my seat all the way up. All
Right.
my mirrors were perfect. I was like, erect and the whole
Yeah.
time. I would see
Right.
people driving by me and they had their hand out the window or, they'd be leaning back and I'd be like, how can they do it? Right. And it was just that they drove so many years. That guy drove for 30 years. That's how he's that comfortable. And you're able to go from like that stiff driving experience to now you can text somebody, you can be eating a burrito, you're doing all these different things and you don't even know that you did all these things while you were driving. And if you do something long enough, then there's like a level you get to where you're almost on autopilot, right? Because you know all of the ways. You don't need to look at a GPS. Like you know exactly how to get home from work, right? So if the
Right.
road gets blocked, you know the side street to go on. And artistry is like that. If you practice enough, you get to a point where you can do things unconsciously that other people may not be able to like even believe. Like, how can you get to that point? But it's just a matter of putting the time and the work in, and eventually you're gonna get to that point.
Right. That 10,000 hours they talk about.
10,000, exactly right.
Yeah. So bring us all the way to the back to the beginning rather. When did you actually start rhyming? When did you start, working on songs and creating?
So my first rap was in high school. I had a friend of mine it was a transplant from New York City, and we were at his mom's house one day, and he played a tape for me, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds pretty good." And he was like, "Yo, that's me." And I was like, "Oh, how did you do that?" And like I was just fascinated because I had never thought of actually being an artist, right? I'm just a fan. I'm a consumer of this culture. I never thought I could participate actively. And he showed me how to do it. He's like on the karaoke machine with the little $5 mic from Circuit City, the blow plastic with all the static and feedback. And we figured it out, and we started making tapes.
Right.
And that was like kind of my entree into like music and actually seeing myself on the other side of the transaction as a creator as opposed to just a consumer. And then I did it a little bit. I was distracted by all the things that you go through when you're in your late teens, early 20s.
Mhm.
And I kind of got jaded and tired because it was so inconvenient, right? Like I think this generation takes for granted the advantage of having a phone in their pocket that they can literally record an entire song and post it to the entire world on, right?
Right.
Like in our days, you had to record it, and then now you have one cassette that you can hand to like a person in front of you, right? How long would it take you to get 1,000 people to listen to your song? Right now, you could just upload it in 30 minutes. It's all over the world.
Yeah. Even like producing. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember I had to save up for MPC,
Yeah.
save up for like months for an NPC, and I got the NPC. But now, like you said on the phone, I can pull up BandLab and just create a beat right there, you know?
And then the distribution part of it, like so, like that's one part of it is being able to actually create. But then how do you distribute that, right? Like so, if you had the NPC, you put in the hours, you were able to make a beat. How do you get that beat to anybody, right?
Right.
You actually physically have to run up on people and say, "Hey, listen to this," right?
Right,
Right?
right.
You hit a button and somebody in China's like nodding to your stuff, making a TikTok video like overnight.
Mhm.
So like the gravity and what it took, I think it was discouraging for me. Like you put all that work in and you can't really see any kind of return on it, and then you start thinking, oh, there's other ways to actually make a living that's a little more easier and practical. So I took a long hiatus. You know what I'm saying? Like literally like 15 years. I didn't touch a microphone. I always like to like write poetry and stuff like that, but I didn't actively record anything.
Right.
And then 2016, I said, let me start recording again because I had GarageBand on my. I didn't even know GarageBand came on Macs. I had like 3 Macs at the time. I didn't even know that I had a recording studio
Right
on the
there.
computer I was using the whole
Uh-huh.
time. So I was like, let me buy like a Blue Yeti mic and just see how
Mhm.
I sound, see if I still got it, if I could shake the rust off. And I sent it to some people, and they were like, "Yeah, you still got it, man." So
Right.
that was kind of like the genesis of like the second act of my musical career.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, you never know in the long run that might have helped you, you know what I'm saying? Because you had all those years. Because 'cause I'm seeing almost like for me producing, it sounds like a lot of the same things. I took 12, 13 years off of producing. And
Yeah,
then and for different reasons. I was just, I wanted to focus on something else. And
yeah,
then, it's just different reasons. But now, like we were talking about before, I kinda got back into it, but now I have all these ideas. I'm like, okay, actually, I could have done like this the first time. I'm gonna do it like this time, you know. So it's like it's almost like a dam holding back water, holding
yeah.
back so long, and then all of a sudden it breaks loose, and now I'm like,
So
okay, I got all this stuff. Same,
yeah,
it sounds like the same thing with you, you know.
yeah, and it's like when you leave, like you were an artist that was contemporary at that time, right? So you were tapped into everything sonically, the trend of everything.
Right,
And when you take a big enough hiatus, and like hip hop is such a fast moving genre of music, like there's literally every 3 months there's a different sound that comes out, and then that becomes kind of like the thing that's at the forefront of the music.
right,
So I had that experience, and I know you kind of told me about it when you were dipping back into the producing. Like the game changed so much, and like you might have walked away. Like if you look at like 2K, you might have been like a 98 ranking
Hmm.
when you left, and then you come back and you're like, oh man, I got to get back in shape. I got to
Right.
learn like the different rules of the game. Like you
Yep.
can't hand check anymore, so I got to learn how to play like off ball and
Yeah. People
so like
flopping all around the place.
yeah, you're just like, what happened, right?
Right.
So it
Right.
takes a little bit of time to get your rhythm back and to get into game shape. But I think the people that come from our era, like we had to work so hard initially,
Hmm.
and there was such a high barrier for entry that we can quickly adapt to whatever it is, right? Because it's just a matter of kind of like getting your footing and kind of just getting kind of like calibrating yourself to what's going on,
Right.
and then like the advantage that we have will supersede any kind of challenge that we have in the short term. Because once we really get our foot in, then it's like, yo, we can not only do whatever is trending in the moment, but we can bring a whole new perspective and this evolved skill set and the nuance that a lot of the guys that just got into the game can't bring.
Right. That's true. That's true. So this is going back to your musical process, how you complete songs. So you got the beat, you flow to the beat. No songs you write. You just go everything off the top of the head. Once you have that on the track, what's the engineering process look like? Do you engineer the song yourself? Do you send it out to be engineered? What's that look like?
Um, I do everything except the production,
Okay.
right? So
Okay.
like essentially like an entire label stack. So it'd be like the A&R part, picking the beats, the recording, the engineering, the album art, the packaging, the distribution. I just can't produce, and not because I don't want to. I'm not good at it. Like
Yeah.
I took a step, and I was just like, "Yo, there's no way." Like the skill gap is so big for me. I just don't have. I don't have a like a natural inclination to it,
Mm,
and I don't love it enough to become great at it. You know what I'm
right.
saying? Like
I got
if I loved it enough, I could have put the work in and eventually get to a proficiency level that would be enough to. But that gap is so big, and I'm so much more in love with like the spoken part of it, like the
you. Right.
performance part of it, that I'm just like, yo, this is I want to do the part of the thing that I love,
Yeah, that
right?
makes sense. That makes
Yeah,
sense. And plus, it's only so much time in a day. You can't to 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 produce on that level and to rap on the level that you rap on. That's going to take a lot of time. You might not be able to do 17 albums in 17 months at that rate.
definitely not. Yeah, it'll come. It'll increase my workflow by a factor of like 20, like to be able to get, and especially if that's my weakness.
Right.
Like, so yeah, it'll be a huge handicap for me. But it's great to be able to have platforms like BeatStars and Bandcamp, and you just start networking with people. I mean, that's the great side of social media is the fact that you can meet people that have common interests, and like people I would have never been able to actually ever come across in real life.
Right.
Absent of social media, that I'm like really close with, that I built like really strong friendships with, and we met because of a post that I commented on, or they commented or DM'd me, and then we became real close off of that.
Okay.
So artists today have a lot of advantages that people that came in when me and you came in don't have, and I, they should just be they should be grateful and not feel entitled and jaded because they don't know the world before, like they had access to all of this stuff and the ability to distribute their music and their art so easily.
Right. Right. How do you think that's affected the music itself? Having that easy access, having that that connection, ability to connect with people halfway across the world, or not even halfway across the world, across the world. And how do you think it's affected the sound of the music?
That's a great question, man. I mean, that's it's that's such a profound like subject to unpack.
Mhm.
Um, I think the biggest shift from mine and your era, like when we came in to right now, like somebody that's coming in right now,
Mhm.
is the entry barrier was higher when we started.
Right.
You had to love it and you had to be good at it, right? That was the requisite, a prerequisite to get into it. Now, I don't think I think talent and artistry is almost an inconvenience.
Mhm.
Um, I think celebrity is what drives it, and I think that when celebrity becomes the primary metric, um, it opens the door to anybody who is less talented, that's less driven, that's put in less work, and they're able to get a lot further because they're able to cut through and bypass the work part. All they have to do is get attention. And if getting attention is your primary motivation, it's not going to be through art. It's going to be through shock. It's going to be through awe. It's going to be through doing things that evoke emotions from an audience.
Mhm.
And you have to write 100 Grammy nominated songs to get the amount of coverage that you would get from doing one crazy thing online and getting a bunch of attention,
Right.
right? So the most negative behavior gets the highest reward, right?
Mhm.
So I think that definitely the quality of music and the standards have gone down, but it's because they're not artists anymore. They're just celebrities. And the people that are coming into music are not there because they're driven by promoting and creating their art and sharing it with the world. They're driven by becoming a celebrity. So the music is almost like a distraction from what they're really there to do. It's just a road that allows them to actually get in there. I had a line in my artificial album. It was a reasonable doubt mindset since 9-6. Now it's a 6-9 mindset that gets the guys lit. You see that flip? You know what I'm saying? And that's
Mhm.
exactly what encapsulates what's happening right now.
Mhm.
Like Kendrick is undeniably one of the most talented people of the newer generation.
Right.
He needed a cosign from Dr. Dre to get on, right?
Mhm.
So
Right.
talented as he was, he needed a 30-year veteran, essentially the GOAT, to get him into the game,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So look at the calculation. The most talented guy needs the biggest guy to co-sign him, right? Meanwhile, look at all these people that artistically are considerably lower, like as an artist, and they would probably admit it themselves.
Mhm.
They're able to get on so easily. And it's because the people that are gatekeepers now, they weren't the people that were of the culture like when we were coming up.
Mhm.
When we were coming up, the people that were the gatekeepers in hip hop came from hip hop. And hip hop was on life support, right? Me and you had to live through the era where C. Dolores Tucker was trying to cancel NWA,
Right.
right? DMX got album of the year for Billboard, and he got the R&B award because Billboard didn't decide that hip hop was a viable. This is 98,
Right.
1998. They didn't even think hip hop deserved its own category, right? So and that's kind of like where the cultural rift comes too, because we're invested. Like we feel like, yo, we had to support this thing when it was on life support and people thought it was a fad, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
We supported it all those times. Somebody that's coming into the game right now, 50 Cent is old school to them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
50 Cent is cool Mo D to us. You know?
Right.
So by the time 50 got on, he was doing 13 million on his debut. So think of how much the art had evolved and it became commerce. So now it's not Russell Simmons that's running Def Jam. It's some dude from Harvard or some Ivy League dude that got in there, and he's just looking at it like, how do we monetize this? How do we have a great report, our quarterly report for our shareholders, right?
Mhm.
And they're looking at it and they're like, yo, it's going to take us so much time to cultivate and find the next Nas or the next Kendrick or the next Cole. But 6 9s grow on trees. We can
Mhm.
just find him, pump him up. As soon as we cut our losses. He already
Yeah.
made him hot. We're not even gonna look at him until he gets hot, right? So the kid wants to get hot. He's not trying to win a Grammy. He's trying to win the Gram.
Right. Right.
So he'll go do something crazy to get the attention, which
Yeah.
will allow them to promote it, and they have no risk at that point because he already made himself hot, and then they could just walk away. He goes to
So you
jail.
think no, go ahead.
Bobby Shmurda goes to jail. All right, see you later, bro. It's been real.
Next one up.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I got you. I got you. So you think it's been fully commercialized and it's now a business opportunity. It's now a commodity. It's a commodity for a record
absolutely
label.
business, man.
Right.
If Pepsi's trying to sell something, who are they going to get? They're signing hip hop artists. They're not signing country. They're not
Right.
signing rock and roll. When's the last time you seen a rock and roll dude get a national commercial?
It's been a while. It's been a
Yeah.
while. Maybe Monday
So
Night Football.
we're hip hop's an ATM, man. So when you have people that don't care about the culture and they're just there for a money grab, it changes everything, man. The whole calculation is different. So like people like us, like we sound like the old heads, like back in the day when they'll listen to somebody like NWA, they'd be like, that's not music, because they listening to the Isley Brothers, they coming off of the Marvin Gaye, they coming off of like that era, the Gap
Right.
Band, and
Right.
so
Curtis Mayfield and everything. Yeah.
yeah, like so we sound like them, but like I didn't really connect the dots. The reason that we feel so like we feel territorial about it, and we protect it so much is because we supported it when it wasn't a real thing, right? It was our going to Sam Goody and Tower Records and on Tuesdays and buying these albums that convinced the people in the boardroom that this was worth doing, even
Right.
though they were doing everything in their power to shut it down, right? So we at our own detriment, and we financed this. Like if you go look at my CD collection, the amount of money that I spent on CDs between 1995 and 2005, I mean, I could have probably bought a brand new Beamer.
Yeah, I'm with you. And before that, tapes. For me, I started out with the tapes.
And now for
Yeah,
$10 a month, you can get access to all the music in the world.
yeah, yeah. But it's kind of. I feel what you're saying, and I agree with you to a certain point. But to me, it seems like a double-edged sword. So in order to get to a certain level, so hip hop, as we know, hip hop is the number one selling music category, number one selling genre. It's basically pop music at this point, right?
I would even say it's the most influential art form of the last 100 years. I don't think you can point to anything that had the amount of impact socially, culturally, economically that hip hop has had. I
I can
think
go with that.
it transcends like a music genre. This is a social culture at this point. It's a phenomenon.
I can see that. I would say jazz is up there too, but I could definitely see that.
Let me ask you this: if you walk on the street, random street, any city,
Mhm.
say a jazz musician, and you say the Migos, or you say Kendrick, who are more people going to be recognized, regardless of the demographic of the person you're
Well,
asking?
now Kendrick, but if we go back to the '60s, at that point, pre
But
hip hop, it would be jazz.
if you walked on the street back in those days and asked the people, like average person that wasn't into jazz, right? Just a random person, like the sample was just a random person on the street.
Mhm.
I don't think the average person had the awareness of people in jazz the way that the average person. I think there are people that can recognize a rapper but don't know who the delegate in their city is. They don't know who the mayor of their city is. They don't know who the police commissioner is. Right?
I got you. I got you.
I don't think
I would,
it ever got to that point at any point.
really, so you don't think if someone walked out and said Miles Davis or John Coltrane, people would know who they were,
I
even if
don't.
they weren't jazz musicians, even if they
I
weren't.
think if you showed, I think if you showed a picture to a random person in the street back in those days, whatever those guys were at their peak, the average person would struggle. Versus right now, you could point a hip hop artist to a soccer mom, and she'll know who Cardi B is. They'll know
Definitely, you're
who.
right. You're right about that. Yeah.
Right. So I think back then it was people that were in music and that enjoyed music, and they consumed it. Right now, it could be somebody who's never bought a hip hop record, but they'll know who a hip hop person is. And that's the influence that everybody's tapping into. Politicians, they're all reaching to the hip hop. Trump went to Kanye. He
Right.
didn't go to Toby Keith. He didn't go to Garth Brooks. He went to Kanye to get it. He went to Lil Wayne. He went to Kodak Black because he knows behind the scenes that that's the thing that's going to have the most recognition and the influence. So
Right.
that's
So
what I mean by saying influence.
right. So to that point, how can so with hip hop being so influential around the world, so many people gravitate to it. No hip hop artists, and it's just a part of culture, world culture, right? It being so influential, there's gonna be so many more people that want to do it. With so many more people want to do it, and on top of that, with the internet and the barrier entry is so low, how can you keep the level of artistry high when you have so many people flooding to do it and it's so easy to do at this point? Like, how can we? That's what I'm saying, like a double-edged sword. It seems like the more popular a genre gets, and the more people that want to do it, naturally, the more the quality is going to go down to it, especially if you put it in the internet.
Yeah, I think I agree in principle. I think what happens is the quality is just not promoted. Like you have to go out there and mine for it, right?
Right.
The thing that's promoted by the machine is the thing that's the easiest to sell. The thing that's easiest to sell is the thing that can get the most visceral, immediate reaction from people, right?
Mhm.
So I think right now there's way more talented, like great artists, but they just don't get the shine. Back in the day, they
Mhm.
would promote the talent, right? That was the thing that got it. Like Nas was Nas, so they promoted Nas. But now they're not trying to find the next Nas because they're like, yo, it takes too much money to build, and it's also because they used to sell the CDs for $20 a pop, right? So
Mhm.
even if you sold 500,000, it's at $20 a pop. They're getting their money 100 times
Right.
over.
Right.
Now you can't monetize. And then the thing is, like me and you probably know this, but the average person doesn't know when the record industry realized that streaming was the way of the future, and they couldn't stop it because they got their head busted by Napster. And
Mhm.
then Steve Jobs came in and when they were sleeping at the wheel trying to sue like artists for like or like random people for copyright infringement. Steve
Mm-hmm.
Jobs figured it out. He made the iPod, he made iTunes, and then he became the biggest music retailer. And then that was the nail in the coffin for traditional music. They can't press up these CDs anymore. They went and cut deals with Spotify and all these other streaming services to give them preferential treatment and contracts that are favoring the label. And the labels basically conceded all of their artists, and they have that right in the deals that they sign with these artists initially. So the labels still get paid. The
Mm-hmm.
artist gets, just to give you an idea, like it takes 10,000 streams to make like $3 on a streaming service,
Wow.
right? Versus you could sell, like I bought singles. Remember maxi singles?
Yeah,
Like
of
the
course.
video drop. So I used to pay $6 for a maxi single,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to buy 10 of them like a month,
Right.
right? So
Right.
now all that money's gone from the record industry, and the record industry went from like I think it was like $76 billion a year to like $13 billion a year in 1 year.
Right. Right.
All that money went away, right? So now they're like, okay, art is not what we're selling. We're actually in the business of selling like heat at any given time. Whoever's hot, that's what we're pumping, and we want to make the easiest thing to sell the hottest thing in the world.
Yeah,
So
and that's
conflict
what
of interest.
right, and that's what they also start doing the 360 deals on top of that to get a piece of the
100%.
market. Right.
Everything, yeah, yeah, so it's like it went from more of a meritocracy, right? Because what was rewarded and incentivized was artistry for the label, for the artist, for everybody, right? For the consumer. And then as soon as they realize that they can't monetize it at the scale that they need to, then they're like, we're not going to be selling art anymore because that there's no business. It's a loss to sell art. By the time you develop an artist, put a promotional package for them, get them on all the places that you got to get them, and you're getting streams, nobody's buying CDs anymore.
Mhm.
For them, the math doesn't make sense, and they
Yeah.
don't love it enough to actually to take a loss on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes yeah, yeah, absolutely. So why would they not? If you're only looking at hip hop from just a pure business standpoint, why would you not? Why would you would have to invest in somebody who's already has a following from their social media and everything like that instead of, like you said, investing in a Nas early on and then building his career from
Yeah.
there or someone like that. So man, so if someone came to you and said, I have this deal on the table to sign with a major, or I can go independent, would you advise that they stay independent or go with the major, with all these things being considered?
That's situational. So it depends on where you are, and it depends on what they're willing to give you in the deal. Um, and it that answer is different for everybody, right? So if you've already created enough leverage, and you created a fan base on your own, right? There's only a certain level that you can get to on your own. If you're really trying to scale and you're trying to tap into like the resources and the relationships that the label has in place already with distribution, with like media markets and being able to get you in places that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get to on your own. If they're looking at it as risk assessment, they're like, okay, Daryl has created this much buzz. He's able to fill out these venues, and he's able to consistently sell that. That considerably mitigates our risk. So we're willing to put the money in at a better rate of return for him because he did a lot of the work that we would do anyways. We're just helping him kind of get over the finish line. So a person that's in that situation and they can hold out and negotiate, it would make sense to go with a major because they'll be able to actually bring enough value to validate whatever you're giving up in order to get their buy-in. If you're just starting out, it depends on whether you have like the actual hustle and consistency and the resilience to get to where they're gonna get you. So they might be able to get you a lot faster to where you want to go. But for them to come in at that point, they're looking at it like it's a bigger risk for us. We're putting up all this money, and traditionally, most of our artists don't do what we think that they're going to do.
Mhm.
So for us, this is a higher risk. So in order for us to be interested in working with you, then this is the deal that we're going to give you. And a lot of times, somebody that doesn't feel like they can, or they've hit a ceiling as far as how much they can do on their own, it might be worth it to sign with them to be able to get up into the Breakfast Club or to be
Right.
able to get on Hot 97 that they would never be able to get on their own. And then they'll look at it like I can use that as an opportunity and a billboard to be able to get my name out and build that celebrity currency that they need to
Mhm.
be able to sign other deals, to be able to springboard into other relationships. But then that also depends on the 360 deal. So, the labels aren't stupid. They're like, yo, we got you on Charlemagne, we got you on Jimmy Kimmel. Now you're a big time celebrity. So if you go and sign a sponsorship deal, we want part of that as well.
Right. Right.
Right. So like it's all like give and take. The more you're able to reduce the risk for a potential investor, and this is the business side of it, we're both startup founders, so we kind of see it when we're building our startup. The more
Hmm.
value you're able to create in a situation, the more people are going to be interested in working with you, and the better terms you're going to be able to negotiate. So like that hustle and that grind and that value that you build on your own momentum and your own steam and your own energy is what's going to allow you to be in to command and demand the best type of deal. Um, so to answer your question, that was a long-winded answer, but it just depends on it's situational. Like I wouldn't
Right.
say blanket deal. Some artists it makes sense to sign with a label. Some
Hmm.
artists I can, we can do a partnership or we can do some sort of a deal where you offset some of my deficiencies and I'm willing to concede certain parts of the deal in order to get, the attention or whatever you're going to be able to bring me.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like you said, it's all about leverage,
Yeah.
leverage and ownership. Like to take it back to the startup world, it's a lot. The dynamics of that are the same as should I get investor funding or not. It's not as simple as like yes or no. It's like what's the investor getting you? How much do you have to give up in order to get that? Can you bring yourself to a certain level to change the leverage, to
Yeah.
change the pool that you have in the deal? So it's the same situation, same thing that you're talking about, basically.
Yeah, it's a parallel journey. Like essentially, if you want to simplify it, an artist is a startup, right? So it's just the roles just change. So the artist is the startup. The labels are the VCs, right? And
Right.
you have different levels of VCs. You got like angel investors that invest earlier on. They're more tolerant to risk. And then you got like the big guys, like the Excel Partners or the Sequoia, and that would be like Atlantic or
Right.
like Sony or somebody like that,
Hmm.
Columbia. And depending on where you are and depending on how much traction that you can get, it reduces the risk for the investor, and that makes them more willing to even entertain the idea of partnering with you. And you need partnerships at every level of business, right? Like Google partners with people. Technically, they can build everything under the sun, right? They would never have to partner. But the reason that the partnership exists is because whatever you have, like money is not what's the prime metric for them. They have unlimited money, but the time to develop something that already works is the thing that they're buying from you, right? So the partnership is based on you created a value that is more valuable than the money that they're giving. So anytime a deal wants to, investors only come in when there's a disproportionate return for them, right? So you have to be comfortable with saying that the only reason that your interest is justified is because I'm undervalued,
Right.
right? If you're overvalued, they're not coming in. They're not coming
Right.
in at all.
It's not in the
Um,
best interest. Right.
exactly. So they're always looking for something that is minimal risk and is undervalued at the time, and they're trying to get in because they feel like their investment of $1,000 would give them $100,000 back.
Right. Right. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I'm glad that's something that a lot of artists need to know, and a lot of artists need
And
to
I mean, and there's so much you could do on your own in this day and age. Like there's so many resources that are available to you. And I mean, can you think about like an artist in like '98, what they would have to go to even be able to record a demo? Like the entry barrier for that
Yeah, it's a lot because you don't have the internet. This is pre-internet, so you have to find the producers on your own with the relationships, not
studio
even
time.
studio time. I mean, not even get to the point of distribution and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So you like it's I could see how you got frustrated. I can see how artists would get frustrated. Like I have so many hurdles to climb
yeah,
before I even get a chance. So
right.
right. No, I understand. I get you. I get you. So going back to the heyday. So it sounds like we both think like the '90s was for at least for me. I think the '90s was the pinnacle of hip hop as far as talent is concerned, as far as just pure talent. Like, when I came up and I listened to, for instance, Redman or Wu Tang or Nas, I never thought I could do that. I could do something like that. It was just so far above my skill level, and so
Right.
it's just like these are the pros right here. Who would you put? I'm taking out Tupac. I'm taking out Biggie. I'm taking out Nas. I'm taking out Jay Z. Who would be on your '90s Mount Rushmore?
We talking albums or we talking about
We
artists?
talk about artists.
Fuji's.
Okay.
Um,
Artists or groups. It could be a group like Fugees. Yeah.
Wu-Tang,
Okay.
um, like the whole West Coast movement, like that tree, the NWA tree.
Mhm.
It's such a vital part of hip hop. Like, think of when you think Dr. Dre, think of everything that came from the tree of Dr. Dre, the Eminems, the Snoops, the 50 Cents,
Mhm.
the Kendricks. Like, you can trace it all the way back to him. Think of Ice Cube and how impactful he was. Like those two guys were, I mean, I don't know how much they account for it. A couple 100 million records sold between the
Oh,
two of
easy.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would have to say NWA. I, I was a little young to be like, because they came out like 88, 89. I wasn't, I was too young to be actually like a consumer of hip hop at that point, but their impact was definitely felt all throughout the 90s. Um, and then the same thing with Wu Tang. So many people kind of like sprawled out from that are still relevant today. Like if Ghost drops an album today or Raekwon drops an album today, like hip hop stops,
Mhm.
right? Everybody stops and listens and pays homage. Um, and man, there's so much talent, bro.
Yeah.
Like even like for me, MOP,
Mhm.
like consistently good. Like I've never heard a bad album from them. Um, LL, like how
Yeah.
can you not say him, right? Mr.
Yeah.
Smith.
It's about 3 decades too.
Yeah, the guy just never fell off, man. Like he just kept reinventing himself. He bodied everybody along the way. Um, and like I think that's where like the separation came. Like if you look at hip hop is like in a linear way, right? And you see like the guys that first started hip hop, right? Like the Grandmaster Caz and those guys and the way they were rhyming, right?
Mhm.
And then you kind of see the evolution from them to like Run DMC. It wasn't that big of a
Mhm.
gap, right?
Right.
Then like Rakim and those guys came, right? And the Cool G Raps, and you're like, oh, there's a big gap between like Run DMC
And then
type rhymes and
yeah.
like Cool G Rap kind of rhymes. And then I think the crescendo was Jay-Z, Nas, Biggie, Tupac. Like those guys took it as high as it can go artistically. Like the inflection point was right there. And then from there, it's kind of just stayed where it was at. It never exceeded that. That was the peak of it. And that's why that plus the fact that we were fighting all of the forces that were trying to like say hip hop was a fad, and they were trying to limit hip hop. Like there was the government. Like Luke Campbell had to go to like the Supreme Court for freedom of speech, right?
Right.
You had all of these forces that were political, and the FBI sending letters to NWA saying you can't say F the police. So like we fought through all of that and supported them through that. So like all those things together, plus like the pinnacle to which like the art ascended to, I think that's what makes that the golden era. And then after that, all you got to do is maintain. Like, don't mess this up. Like, you
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? Like, it's like the team. Like after Steph and all them, they get a 40-point lead. The bench comes in. Just don't blow the lead, right? All we need to do is win by one, right? So
Right.
that's kind of like what the rest of the people had to do. That we kicked all the doors in. We set the precedent. We got you $1 billion valuations. We're giving you like these deals, these endorsement deals that now you're able to get just because you can say a couple of bars on a verse. That's all you got to do. Just maintain it. So like this generation's job isn't to really ascend. It's just to kind of like stay on cruise control and don't blow it.
Okay. Okay. So lastly, taking everything into account, um, if you were talking to like the younger generation, right, and they were just starting out, what's something you can tell from all your years of of being an artist, of seeing a lot of stuff as an independent artist? Um, what are some lessons learned that you know now that you can kind of give to a younger generation just starting out in hip hop?
Oh wow, that's a great question. Um, I think hip hop is viewed in a different lens than other genres of music. Um, there's a journalistic ethic and authenticity standard that is held to hip hop. I think we do it to ourselves, but I think it's because it's a very genuine and uncontrived form of art, right? Like Jackson 5, like the jazz musicians, these guys were polished, right? They had wardrobe. There was choreography. There was all kinds of stuff that was built into it that made it kind of different from the audience, right? So you go to a show and the artist was above you, right? Because these guys are these heralded polished, notable artists. With hip hop, the dudes on the stage looked like the guys in the crowd. They were wearing the same shoes. They were talking the same way. It was literally streets to the stage. So over time, it created um, this requirement of you had to be speaking your truth. Like hip hop, you always assume that the rapper is talking about themselves, right? When Britney Spears writes a song, Mariah Carey writes a song, when Adele writes a song, you don't necessarily think that it's her story. They're performing it. They're the presentation part of the art. Versus with hip hop, when somebody doesn't write the songs, when you're like, what? He didn't write that, right? So that's why, like, when you find out like people aren't really who they say they are, and there's all these conflicting things, you're like, yo, you're this guy in the music, but your history is not the same. That's why, like, you raise your eyebrows and you're like, oh, okay, that's a red flag. Um, I think that we it's a trap, man. That's why it's called the trap. We're in the trap. We call it the trap, and the game is a trap. So like we box ourselves in, and like I've never seen this many tragedies in hip hop, right? Like we always had like this danger part to it, but it wasn't like, yo, 10 rappers killed in like 6 months, and it's the double-edged sword. Right now it's popular, now it's transcended just beyond like a neighborhood or like a region. It's global. And like my advice to them is don't let the pursuit of celebrity and what you think people think of you influence your art to the point where you become a prisoner of your own art. And I see a lot of people that I'm like, you're in a situation that you don't need to be in, that ends terrible because you said something you shouldn't have said, because you were trying to impress somebody that you shouldn't be trying to impress. And the only person that made money in that situation was YouTube, was the lawyers, was the correctional system, the the funeral home. Like those people made money, right? You lived for whatever 20 years and you created a situation through the art form that was supposed to take you out of the situation you were in, but it brought trouble to your doorstep. And my advice is don't let the art make you a prisoner of the content you create. And it can be a tool for like ascension and like getting out of a situation, but I'm seeing it more being a tool for destruction, and it's destroying the person that created it. So I would like to change that in hip hop. I don't see these other genres of music, the people dying and being in trouble and incarcerated in the way that we are, right? So let's not be the most money making genre of music, but also the one that's feeding the correctional system and it's feeding these lawyers and all these other people that are ancillary kind of predators that are reaping the benefit of stuff that we're creating because of the mentality that we're stuck in.
Right. That's great advice. That's
Yeah.
definitely great advice. And I don't want to keep you here too long. So lastly, we'll just end off with this. Let us know what you got coming up for 2022. I just checked out that last album, Retro, great album. And let us know what you got. What else you got coming up?
So I took a little bit of a hiatus. This is like the longest time I've taken off. Like, so I took like what 2 months off.
Yeah, well deserved, man. Well deserved break.
Yeah. So I was scared that I would be rusty. So like I actually have a project coming out with Furious Styles. He's a great producer out of Gary, Indiana, of East Chicago, Indiana. Kind of a throwback to your era, my era. So I did an EP for him. It's called The Basement. I think it's dropping in April. And then I'm gonna get back to like the album a month, second half of the year. I'm just doing a lot of features for people that supported me. A lot of artists that were fans of mine that wanted to collaborate with that I didn't have a chance to reach out to them because I was on that run. So now I'm just like kind of responding to them and supporting them and showing them love as well. But definitely there's going to be 6 projects that I'm going to drop between now and the end of the year. And another thing that you didn't say, I didn't say it yet, but one of the things I pride myself on is not using profanity in my music, right?
Right.
And I wasn't always that way. I'm not being judgmental. I understand like creative license and art. And sometimes you need those words and you need that imagery to paint the picture that you're trying to paint. But um, I think that it's rare, and I think it's notable. And being able to have music that anybody of any age and never have to check that explicit button when you're submitting to Spotify. That's like one of the things I hang my hat on, and still being able to paint a picture that's vivid and enjoyable for the listener. So anybody that's listening that's not familiar with my music, no pen, but no profanity either.
All right, that's really impressive, man. Where can we find you at? What's your handle?
Uh, Abel Meri, ABELMERI everywhere. Instagram, Twitter. Website is abelmeri.com, ABELMERI.com. And then you could just, if you Google my name, it'll like a lot of this stuff will pop up on the first page on all the streaming platforms. But if you're going to support and you want to, if you feel moved enough to actually purchase, you can purchase directly off my website. And, you get 100% of that as opposed to like 70% when they buy off iTunes.
Right, right. Everybody that's tuning in, Abel Meri, appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man. And let me salute you, man. What you're doing in the tech space and bridging the gap between technology and art is commendable, man. It's not easy to do. I know what it takes. I know all the behind the scenes effort and all of the dots you have to connect and all the obstacles that you have to um, basically either think your way around or climb over, especially being a minority in the tech space. What you've done with Base Parlor, like I'm an active member on that. I think it's commendable, and we need more people like you to show us that we don't only have to be consumers of technology; we can actually be the creators of the technology as well.
I appreciate
So
that, man.
salute, man.
I appreciate that. Yeah, man. So I'll talk to you soon, man. I'll talk to you soon. Everybody, check out Abel Mary's music everywhere: Spotify, Apple Music, his website. Go ahead,
Yeah.
get from his website directly. And I'll talk to you soon, man. It's been a pleasure.
All right, bro. Appreciate it.
All right.